Jason, I want to welcome
Hey.
you to the Jehu Garcia podcast. I used to watch your videos way back in the day. And I guess I still do because I just, not recently ago, like just not too long ago, I saw that you're back shooting some videos, right? Because for a while you were gone. And so, yeah, I was like, hey, let's have you on the podcast. Let's talk about the journey, because the journey is what we all go through, and no matter who you are or where you are, you find yourself in one place or the other in the journey. And you have a very interesting one, I think, right now.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah,
So
it's been a crazy story. Like, I started making YouTube videos in 2014, I think, in my garage, which I'm in my garage now, but just putting electric skateboards together and like trying to work out how to make motor mounts and like looking back, it was all pretty simple stuff. But the thing is, there was no one else on YouTube put it this way, you could go into YouTube and type how to build electric skateboard, and there was nothing.
yeah.
There was no proper tutorial. So I thought to myself, well, that could really help a lot of people out. You know, if I just made a video that was like step by step, and that's what I did. And, and then, I went down the rabbit hole of becoming an entrepreneur and starting up businesses and developing hardware. And recently, unfortunately, that my first enterprise that I created, Enertion, I had to close it down. It got to a point where it was not viable. But we must go on, right?
Live and learn, right? Yeah, that's a very interesting. For me, it's very interesting, and I'm sure there's a lot of people like me, because I've gone that route, the same route where back in the day, I was working at some dumb job, and I just wanted to get out of there. I want to do something fun, something I enjoy, and then I figure out that I wanted to do videos and I want to do production, but I couldn't afford the gear. So then I was like, well, let me make my own gear, let me couple up some stuff. And then next thing I knew, I had a business doing that, making like little tripods and little just stuff, right? Like gear for the filmmakers. And then, we did that for like 5 years. But then I'm like, that's the whole thing. It was like kind of like a bubble, right? It's a bubble market. And it was my first time doing a business, and I couldn't see that I was inside of a bubble. I thought, oh my God, this sales are coming in like crazy, like more than I can handle. This is gonna keep going on forever, And so I was like on this grow, mentality. Just hire someone else. We need help doing this thing. We can't get them fast enough. Hire someone else, And then next thing I know, I had a giant crew.
Yeah, man.
and it gets away from you.
In multiple countries across the globe, different languages, different time zones. Like I couldn't sleep at night because people who work for me in a time zone that is awake when I'm asleep, they have questions, they want help, they need to know stuff. So it's no longer a 9 to 5 gig, it becomes 24/7. I got 2 kids as well. Like I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, which my boy was born the year I started Enertion. So he's the same age and grew up with that. And I'm meant to be a stay-at-home dad. I was meant to be the guy that made sure he was brought up and looked after. And of course I did that, but put the business on top of that, man, it was a hell of a ride, I tell you.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. I never had employees like remote. I always just had here, right? We had a place and we would come in. But I do remember just thinking like how out of control it gets, once you have like 20 employees, and I just couldn't. I never got a manager. I don't know if you went that route, like if you got a good manager to manage all your teams and your people, but I never got one. And so I was like, I don't know these people. I would walk in here and go like, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? You're like, I don't know. I'm only here for like a couple hours, and I'm running around doing my stuff, and I'm trying to get everyone to do their stuff. Everybody was looking at me for answers, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, I couldn't pay attention to everything that was happening, and so I couldn't put my finger on, like, are we making money? Are we heading the right direction? Who knows? And by the time that
Yeah.
I found out, I'm like, no, we're not making money. We haven't been making money for like a year, and all those assets that you accumulated, through good times, through good years, and prosperous times, they're all just are going out the door, right? You're paying a bunch of people that that
Yeah.
you don't want to let go
Yeah,
of, and
and the same thing, it sort of happened with the electric skateboarding industry because, like you sort of said before, it was like a bubble. Well, I don't know if that's the correct term in electric skateboarding, but there was certainly a hype. I call it the hype cycle. So where everything's getting really, everyone's excited and there's new technology and there's stuff that people haven't seen before and it's all happening and everyone's pumped up about it. And it's a natural cycle with any technology, I believe. When you start looking into it, you see, I'm sweating, man. It's hot in Australia, guys. It's like 30 degrees here. But yeah, I think if you look at what happened with boosted boards, I mean, they raised like 70 million over a short period, 3 or 4 years. Inboard technology raised, I think, 10 or 20 mil in a similar time fashion, and those companies are gone. Like, where did that money go? You know what I mean? If I had 70 mil, I mean, I could have done a lot with that money, but this is the thing. The hype gets to a peak. People realize, maybe this isn't what it could be, or there's disappointment. People get let down. There's a stagnation in innovation. Something happens and the hype cycle starts to sort of fall back down and people start to become more realistic about what the future might actually hold in terms of the technology. And I think that's where we're at now with electric skateboarding. So it will ramp up again and it will stabilize, but it wiped out a few people along the way.
yeah, I think all these companies went through something similar as you, right? Like do you think so? Do you think they just did it at a higher level, like the same obstacles that you face, the same thing? It's just like with more money and more people and more employees, or you think it was a different thing for them?
I think it was different, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I didn't get to walk in the shoes of the CEOs of those companies, but I can imagine that there was a certain level of chaos and there was a certain level of, let's just make stuff happen and pray. I think it's easy to get caught in that mentality where you're trying to push things forward at any cost because you think the future is going to be the same as the past. You think there's going to be growth, and honestly, I think the growth in the electric skateboard industry sort of stopped. I mean,
I think it shifted, no?
Yeah, it's.
I think it shifted. I think it went to Chinese companies because I think Chinese companies are thriving right now in the electric skateboard business, right?
That's
like,
a huge
world.
part of it. Yeah, yeah.
The same thing happened to us. Like when I first got into the camera business, it was, it was a bunch of DIY. We were trying to make these cameras look more cinematic, right? Because they didn't look cinematic at all. So we were adding all kinds of lenses. We were doing all kinds of like products, adapters, all stuff. But then Canon comes out with the 5D Mark II, and then that camera fixes all those problems. All of a sudden, that camera, it's got a large sensor, and it looks just like film. And you're like, well, we don't need all these nonsense anymore. So they kind of put us out of business, like from one day to the other one. Now it would ramp down and stuff, right? But then we all will said like, well, okay, this camera is great. It looks more like film, but it's got a terrible form factor. It doesn't look like the traditional camera. Let's build all these little gadgets and trinkets to be able to make it more usable in a production fashion. Right? So we all just shifted to making rods and handles and, shoulder mounts and weights and all this other nonsense. And then that was good for a little while. But then the Chinese industry basically woke up and we were like, oh, all these American little startups are making money on this. Let's just copy their designs and mass produce them, ship them, sell them on Amazon, send them to B&H, all this stuff. And then they just really, like literally put us all out of business because you can't compete with China. right? Especially
Not-
when they're stealing all your designs.
Yeah.
So
They're smart. And I know a lot of Chinese businessmen and met with them and had dinners with them, and they're smart. They're smart business people. They know exactly when to enter the market. They don't risk a lot of capital on R&D. They're not sort of at that part of the market. They enter just at the right time when all the problems have been sorted out. They come in and they capitalize and scale very quickly, and it's hard to catch that.
well, they
And
excel
then-
at manufacturing, right? And I mean, we
Yes.
like
Yeah.
in the West, we can design stuff to fix problems, or but then we don't know anything about manufacturing, like, right? Like, how much stuff is manufactured in Australia? Like the
Yeah.
States, nothing's manufactured here. Anything you need is you got to go to China.
You got to go to China. So they've got it perfectly worked out. And the other thing is that a lot of people might not realize is that the Chinese entrepreneurs and business, they're small businesses. A lot of them start out that way. They all work with each other. They really do. So they share molds if they have to, because they realize if we share this with 5 other small businesses, we can all start up and it's going to reduce our costs. And they share information. And that's why, I mean, you probably see it in your industry as well, but especially in electric skateboarding. A few years ago, all of these skateboards came out and they all sort of looked the same. They all sort of had the same case
motors.
design.
Yeah,
everything
same
was
hub
very
motors.
similar. Yeah.
That
yeah.
same
And it's-
controller, right? That same controller that had, which, by the way, it was pretty good. I built a few skateboards using them, and it was, I made one that had 4 of them, and it kicked ass. It was kicking ass. It was kicking boosted boards ass. Like, literally, what's the other one? The GT? What's the one really expensive? Something GT?
Evolve maybe?
GT. Okay, Michael
Yeah.
Breen from EV West had one of those, right? It's like a $2,200 board.
Yeah.
With the double jointed thing, it's fancy or whatever. And I remember we drag raced against my little Chinese, with knockoff motors, but all 4 motors with my own like DIY battery, and mine beat it, dude. It just went faster, it went longer. It was crazy, right? And but they all look the same. You're right. They're all like share the same type of motors, their own little controllers and
I mean,
stuff.
It is what it is. The consumer is the winner at the end of the day, right? Like, the people are getting better value, I guess. They're getting maybe not innovative stuff, but they're just getting. You can go and buy a pretty good electric skateboard for $500 now.
Yeah.
If you really are on a tight budget. So I'm not complaining. I'm not a sore loser. I was there to see it all happening, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. So you ramped up, right? Like I said, I used to watch your videos from way back in the day when you were in your garage building them, and you had a couple friends showing up, and you were testing your boards. It was pretty exciting because I think at that time there wasn't a lot in the market. There wasn't like a powerful speed controller, right? And then you kind of, so you took kind of that Vetter, that VESC or something, and then you made it your own, right? Because it was an open source project, right? So everybody could like change it up and make it better and all this other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that made my company stand out. Like, that was the original motor controller that we developed there, and it's based on an open source design
platform.
And my company back in the day, back in 2014, Enertion, we're trying to get good parts together so people can build skateboards. And the missing link was a motor controller that could run higher voltages. Essentially, that was the main thing that made it better, because the higher the voltage, the more efficient your power system and your drivetrain. You can design a more efficient system, and it just makes sense to run higher voltages. Before that, everyone was using stuff that was for RC cars. So you go to the hobby shop and buy things that just weren't designed for humans to be moved around. The brake was no good. The acceleration was too crazy for it to be comfortable. So this was the first thing that really came out that was programmable and reliable and open source, so everyone could participate in trying to make stuff better. And that's what happened. And we started manufacturing circuit boards, never done it before, and just thought, well, let's just do it and see what happens. And the first batch of 100 was pretty bad. And then the next batch was a little bit better. And then we realized we needed to sort of put a lot more focus and attention on how to get a quality circuit board, because you can put all these little components on here and it can look like it's meant to look, but it won't work. So you've then got to have testing and stuff that backs up the design. And so it took us a while to work out how to do it. And then we started getting advice from engineers who were, specialists in testing electronics, and our team started to grow, and we, started making our different changes to the designs, and eventually ended up with this one, which I don't know if you've seen this one in person yet, the Fockbox Unity, but it's
Unity.
Yeah, it's got the 2 motors built into it, where before with that you had to have 2 of them. Yeah. And it was a real nightmare for people to connect it all together, and it wasn't that user friendly, where now you can sort of just plug it all in. And so now I'm focusing on that. I think there's still a huge demand in the market for affordable, reliable motor controllers that people can just plug together like that. Believe it or not, building an electric skateboard still isn't that simple. Like we can still make it easier. And that's now my goal, pretty much. I just want to make everyone, doesn't matter if you've got a cheap Chinese board or a really expensive Evolve or whatever, if your electronics fail in that and you need to get a replacement part, I want to be the guy that has the product that you can just throw it in and you'll be back up and running again. So that's my new motivation.
I see. Yeah, I never seen that one, but I did buy a couple of the single Fock boxes, the one the black one that's in the, and yeah, when you take it apart,
that, or probably that one.
That one, but with the case, you were selling them for a while with the case, right? And it had that one right there. Yeah, so I have a couple of those, and I took them apart. As soon as you get it, you take it apart, and you're like, oh, okay, you're doing some cool stuff there. You're redesigning, you're using different MOSFETs in there, and then you're putting like a big heat sink, right? So that it would, because that's really what adds reliability to these. It's how quickly you can and efficiently remove like the heat from it, right? And you can stabilize it. All that's other stuff. You use higher quality, like what are those little things?
So we realized
capacitors?
The reference design for the original one was not quite up to spec where it needed to be in terms of reliability. There was the first sort of era of VESC. The biggest thing that happened is the DRV chip, this tiny little rectangle there. They blew up all the time, and it was mostly due to the fact that they were getting voltage spikes and getting a lot of noise, and they just don't like that. So it took a while to work out how to get a clean signal running into them, and mostly it just came down to positioning the components on the circuit board and having the right quality and the right ratings on all of the components. So really technical stuff. I mean, way over my head, but fortunately we had electronics engineers that were great at it. I'm not an engineer. I'm fully self-taught. As a kid, I played a lot of Lego. That was about it. But when it comes to the circuit design, there's so many little variables that go into it to get something that's reliable. And even now, there are people starting up trying to produce them. The reliability is just not there because they haven't gone through the years of trial and error and working out, you need to use more capacitors here, and you need to position them closer to the MOSFETs, and all these little subtleties, it actually makes a huge difference. So fortunately, we went through all the trial and error, and now the product's super reliable. So that's good.
And so you spend quite a bit of time and effort and money into that project, right? Like,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
not
I
cheap.
ended up like, it's not. I put my life savings into my former company and never really paid myself a wage. I worked for free basically for 5 years. And it's, sadly, it just wasn't that profitable. Electric skateboard building in general isn't that profitable. So, that's probably why Boosted Board isn't around anymore. They went broke. They didn't make any money. So,
not what the Chinese can do it for half the price, like when they're flooding the market with something that's compelling enough to buy, you know what I mean? Like, there's a marketplace for premium products, but it's not that big, right? It's usually like it's small, and you have to have a lot of capital. You have to be like Apple, right? Like it has a ton of money and is doing a thing that is really hard for all the other companies to compete. Or you gotta just go and fight them all the time. Whenever they copy you something, you gotta just throw millions of dollars and just years of litigation against them and stuff. So that's the only way you succeed at that stuff. Otherwise, it just gets copied.
I think, it's tough. You either have to constantly innovate, so you're constantly bringing out new, better, which is really not a smart way to run your business in terms of profitability because of the R&D. You're paying more and more engineers to just keep working on new stuff, and really to be profitable, what you want to do is just have one product that you can sell heaps of and try to make a stable business. And if you do not continue to innovate and you do just focus on a stable product like Boosted Board did with their boards, they didn't really change the technology that much over the years, then you get copied. So then you've got to fight legally, patents, design patents, trademarks, copyright. So then you get pulled in that direction. So it's a tough place to be. But if you're passionate about it and you love building stuff, which I do, like I said, I'm not an engineer, but I love creating stuff. I love coming up with ideas and just trying to work out how to make them. And that's what I like doing. So at the end of the day, I didn't become a wealthy entrepreneur, but I learnt a hell of a lot about manufacturing. I learnt from mistakes and why I shouldn't do things a certain way. And you know what? I'm happy. Still happy. Still healthy.
Happy.
And
you're still young too. You're right.
Man.
You learn more out of failure. So you're in a good place because next venture you're gonna do things different. You're gonna be like, that thing didn't work last time. Let's try something different. You're gonna make new mistakes, but the old ones, hopefully, you're not, right? And so you're gonna be a much better, businessman because of this.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite sayings is, what is it? It's die trying or live crying. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that never give it a go. They're too scared, or they're not willing to back themselves financially, or they just, they just don't go to that next level. I was never that kind of guy. I was like, man, I'm going to go down. If I go down on this, at least I gave it a shot. So I think that's a good lesson for any young entrepreneurs coming up. Die trying or live crying.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. I mean, I think people don't get it. It's pretty scary going into business on your own, right? It's like, there's no guarantees you're going to make it, right? Yeah, the reward is big if you make it, but most businesses don't make it. Like, most businesses fail. And then once you see someone succeed at one, you gotta go and ask him, hey, how many times did you fail? It's always gonna be like, I tried. This is my 11th time or something. You know what I mean? Like, I met a guy in New York once, which later he didn't tell me. He was like, kind of like, yeah, I do this, and he was pretty modest. And later on, when I uploaded my video, me talking to him, people are like, you do know who that guy is, right? And I go, no, I don't know. So it turns out that dude had been trying to make a video game. I think 32 times he'd failed. And then on the 33rd time or something, he hit it, and he hit it out of the park, man. He was the guy that made Words with Friends. Remember that game way back in the day?
Yeah.
Okay, that game apparently was like massive, and it was because I remember all my staff used to play. I used to play with all my employees, Yeah. Turns out that dude sold his company for over $100 million. He got to keep like 20% of it, so like $22 million. Just that was just his. And so this is this dude, right, that is walking around. But I didn't know that, right? But that guy was like, I make video games. And it's like, well, he's pretty successful at it because his last venture was pretty successful. But if you take the average, he's a loser, right? Yeah. You lost 32 times, and then you failed 32 times, and then you succeeded once. That's I think most of entrepreneurs go through. It's like it's quite a bit of tries to get it right.
Yeah, and it's the same if you listen to like angel investors or whatever you want to call them, but people that invest in small businesses. Yeah. They know that they're going to lose on 80% of them. But what they do know is that if they pick one that is a winner and it's a unicorn, that initial 20 or 30 or 40 or 50K that they put there, it's going to well and truly make up for the other 20 little bets that they had on the side. So you got to play to win, I think.
You got to play to win. Is
the other way to say it.
How are you going to know that you're not going to hit it out of the park if you don't swing, right? You got to swing.
Exactly. You miss every one that you don't swing for. So
yeah.
Yeah, man. I've always been interested in how to solve problems in a way that often it ends up being like a product. So there's a problem and the solution is a product, and then how do you communicate that to people in a way that they understand it and want to buy it and they're happy. Like, it's a really intriguing puzzle that I love to think about. And that's why I do love business. It's hard, but it's challenging, but it's exciting as well.
It's exciting, yeah. I felt pretty excited for you guys when I was watching those videos where you're going to China and you're setting up, production over there, and you're having to change one factory from another. That was like, oh crap. I'm like, oh, you're really doing it. I thought like, oh, this guy from Australia, he's out in China, he's setting up stuff. I know you had an event here in LA, and I was like kicking myself. So I was like, oh, I should have gone. I should have been out there, At that point, I've never been like as into skateboarding. The only reason why you're in my wheelhouse is because it's similar to what I do. I make electric cars, right, these days. And you're essentially doing the smaller electric cars. That's what they are. Yeah. It's the same technology, exactly. Same motor, same battery technology, same thing. So that's why I was interested in what you were doing, Like very early on, I was like, I was a big fan of Casey Neistat, and he was sporting out his dumps, boosted skateboard around, and I thought like, hey, my God, that's just like my DIY car that I just built. I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. And sure enough, I wanted to become a YouTuber, and I want to make content. And teaching people how to make smaller projects, it's a lot easier than, hey, spend $100,000 in this car that you might finish or might not finish someday, kind of thing. And so that's why I was really interested in that.
But that is the good thing about this scale, because kids like in university or high school kids, it's an engineering project that they can do with their dad or mum or whatever, friends on holiday or at school even, and you can learn. It's a scalable technology. Like if you love Tesla, it's sort of the same thing, but in a small,
Smaller
affordable
size.
size. Like it's the same concept. So yeah, it's
And
cool.
I would say
good
it's
fun.
more fun because there's no more fun than you tinkering with something and, connecting this thing and building it and putting the motors and stuff and then hopping off on it and then just riding around town with it. I mean, these things are super fun, right? I was
Yeah.
like, I totally understand. I was like not into skateboarding at all. And then as soon as I built one and I got on it, I'm like, oh my God, these things are pretty amazing. Just to skate around town.
I think from an engineering point of view, like the simplicity of a skateboard, like mechanically speaking, it's probably the most simple, lightweight, human-grade vehicle that you can get. Like if you think about, it's just a plank of wood with, on each end you've got little wheels with little bearings and another piece of metal that just sits on a bushing and you steer it by leaning. I mean, there's nothing else that's quite as simple as that in terms of the mechanical engineering. I mean, the next closest thing you would say is maybe a scooter, but there's a steering mechanism, there's a brake pedal, there's extra components. So I believe the most simplest human movement technology is a skateboard, and you can do tricks on them, and you can carry it, and you look cool. Right?
Yeah, you do look cool. I don't know if you can pull up the cool look on a scooter. I know some people are doing it, and they're doing tricks and stuff, but I don't know.
For me, skateboarding was always like,
Yes.
I've been skateboarding since I was 6. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, just, but it was always like the rebels that did it, the people, like the people that didn't really quite fit into the other sports, or they didn't follow the rules. Like they were also always like the bad kids. I sort of felt, because skateboarding has never been legal. Like as a kid, you couldn't skateboard in all the best places that you wanted to skateboard, like at the school where there's steps and things to ollie over, and where you want to go and practice your sport. Like it's a sport these days, Olympic sport. Well, it should have been. I think the Olympics got cancelled due to coronavirus. So, but yeah, it was meant to be in the Olympics this year.
And
But yeah,
it didn't.
skateboarding was always like for the misfits a little bit. So I think it's
Yeah.
always going to have that.
That's why it's cool.
Slightly. Well, that's why it's cool. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's always like. I think, hopefully, one day people will see it more like a main form of transport. But I don't think we're there yet. The scooters are, you put
Kinda take
anyone, if it's
over.
an 80-year-old grandma, and put a scooter in front of her or a skateboard, and bet what she's more likely to be able to control and use. It's not
going
the
to be the
skateboard.
scooter. Yeah, it's going to be the scooter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So-
and then it doesn't help that all these companies they dump literally billions of dollars into populating the world with scooters.
Yeah, Lime.
Lime,
They,
Uber.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah.
I think Lime may have bought some of the intellectual property from Boosted, as far as rumor has it. So I don't know if they're going to bring out a skateboard or they just wanted the IP. Who knows?
I think they bought also from Uber, because Uber
Yeah,
had
right.
like e-bikes. They had those they had those
was
jump
it?
bikes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then they apparently whatever was available, like whatever stock was available on the streets, it was like over 10,000 bikes. They scrapped them. And it made the headlines here, right? Because a couple of
Right.
those Gizmodo blogs picked it up. And I got the contract to get all those batteries. So I got those batteries, and then I sold them. I mean, I sold like thousands of those things. So I literally
seen-
had a warehouse full of batteries.
Yeah, I saw like pallets, or you
Yeah.
were bringing in. So what? They're batteries out of bikes or scooters?
Out of the bikes, the e-bikes,
Right.
the jump
And-
e-bikes, yeah. But I couldn't
Yeah,
say it
and-
at the time because there was a contract, and they don't. There's a ton of bad PR, so they were like, "Don't say what these come from. You got to scratch the Jump logo out of them. You got to do this
Right.
whole thing, And so I just said, oh, these are scooter packs, They're not. They were e-bike bikes. But I really couldn't say. I didn't really want to make too much noise because then the contracts end, right? So you're basically like you're their friend because they want to discard all this product. And I'm like, well, I want to help you because these are valuable batteries. These are like, most of them are brand new or slightly used. They shouldn't go to like, you shouldn't be melting them because these are like packs that you can use. And then here's the other thing on my side. I'm like, there's a ton of DIY in this country already, kind of starting. It's like it's rising up, right? And that has value. And I think the more we train people to do DIY, then the faster we will bring in manufacturing, over from China. And I think the better the world is going to be if you have localized manufacturing, right? So there's a ton of good stuff that comes out of not throwing away perfectly good, usable, valuable electronics.
Recycle, upcycle.
Upcycle, secondhand. We're harvesting, we're reusing batteries, and a ton of them. I mean, I started small. I didn't want to do this thing for reals. I didn't want to have employees anymore. But now I'm like, there's so much money to be made on this thing that I'm like,
yeah, right.
I guess I got to do it.
What were you making power walls and stuff out of it, or were you? What was the main thing you were doing with it?
So the scheme that I have going is because I went through Jack 35 where I had over 20 employees, and I failed. I kind of just nosedived. I was like, okay, this time around, let's do things different. Right? I learned my lessons, and then I thought, okay, let's start up a business. And I saw these YouTubers like growing and making a ton of money, and I thought, well, let's give it a shot. I always wanted to be, in production. I want to make videos. I just kind of got stuck making camera equipment, but that's not really the thing that I wanted to do. Second time around, I'm like, I'm not going to get a bunch of employees. I'm not going to sell physical product. Because it's too hard, especially in tech. It's really hard to keep up. You got to keep innovating, and it's hard to keep up with the Chinese, right? So then I thought, I'm just going to make videos. I'm going to make videos, and I'm going to teach people how to whatever. I'm selling dreams now. That's essentially what I'm doing, right? I'm like, I'm a nobody, and I want to be someone that has some kind of success. That's the dream that I'm selling. And here's how I'm going to do it. Here's this week's scheme. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like, that's Casey Neistat, essentially. Right? It's like he's like, I'm a nobody, but I'm going to make something of myself by sheer determination and hard work. So I'm like, that's a dream that I can, that I can get behind. And that's what I'm selling now, right? That same dream. And so that's what I'm doing. And I start basically teaching people how to convert cars because that's what I did. I wanted a Tesla early on and I couldn't buy one because it was too early. So I was like, I'm just going to learn how to make one. So then I just, kind of started looking on the internet, made a Tesla, base car. It's an electric bus, right? And so then I thought, the biggest thing to get is and the hardest thing to get is the battery. Because at that point, the batteries are super expensive. They're rare. Nobody knows these new lithium batteries, right? And so I started like doing experiments and then like getting batteries out of like laptop dead batteries, so extracting the cells, cleaning them, testing them, doing all that stuff. So I'm teaching people how to do that. I'm teaching people how to DIY. And then eventually what starts happening is that then people have access to batteries are like, hey, I have a warehouse full of batteries. Do you want to help me sell them? And I'm like, yeah, we all want batteries. So then I started collecting commissions from them, right? So I would like promote their product, their batteries, and then those would sell. And then I would be like, okay, so, $100,000 worth of batteries sold. Okay, where's my cut? And then I would collect from that guy. And then other people were like, hey, well, I have a warehouse full of batteries too. Can you help me sell? And so then all of a sudden I have these networker people that have product. And then at the same time, I have this channel that's growing of all these people that need to consume this. Like, hey, I want to know how to make an emergency solar power pack, so that, if I live in some island with a ton of like, hurricanes or whatever, like storms, I need to have power. And so now I'm teaching people how to do that, and it's working for a while. I'm making money and stuff, right? And no employees, and almost zero like overhead. I don't have to rent a place. I could do this from my house, right? I don't have to buy the stuff. It's just me and my little camera, and I'm uploading videos every day. It's working. But then, it's a small like market. I think maybe you're like, that market is sort of the same. It's a small market that easily gets saturated. Like you, right? If you make a product and you get some Chinese to copy it, very quickly everyone's going to know, because it's a small market. It's like there's only, 100,000 people, 200,000 people that are interested in skateboards and electric skateboards. And so if someone else is competing with you and they do a good job at advertising, then, you're kind of out of the loop. Everybody knows that you can get the product cheaper from somewhere else, right? So that's sort of what happens with me, because I'm advertising, I'm promoting all these guys full of batteries, and then all of a sudden they cut me out of the loop, because I'm like, what do we need you for? You're expensive. You want commissions? You're expensive. Get out of here. You're not doing that much work anyways. All you do is just make a video, and then, a bunch of stuff sells. So then that's why I was forced into starting my own thing. Now I'm like buying battery, bringing it in-house. I'm checking it. I'm testing it. And then now I'm selling it, and I'm making videos on how to use it. Or at least that's the plan. Right now I'm kind of stuck at just trying to run a company now with selling, physical products. I kind of know that it's not forever. I kind of just want to maximize that while this happens. And then eventually I want to get back to selling dreams. Because that just seems like it's a much better business to be in. It's like you don't need much, right? You just need passion, a little bit of brains, and a lot of determination, and then you can just do it. Set up a little channel, you start promoting yourself, you start doing this thing, and then so that's the business that I am in, and that's why I would kind of cross paths for a little bit, because I was so interested in what you were doing. I thought, like, you're starting up this business, creating these little electric vehicles, right? And
we're very similar in that regard. I mean, I would like to be able to spend more time making videos and making money doing that, but that's hard work as well. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of cost involved to get the right equipment, and then you got to work hard. Like making one video, unless you just do a live broadcast. But if you're recording something, editing, and then uploading it into YouTube, that's not just a day's work. That's like a few days worth of work if you want to do it a good job. Unless you're staying up all night editing the day's footage just so you can upload it that night, you can maybe get a video out, but it's hard work.
And YouTube doesn't pay very well. I mean, unless you're like making, you're getting millions of views, they're not paying you money, right? I was broke for 5 years, dude. Like, I was literally broke. And it wasn't until I was like, okay, that's it. I don't know. I hit critical mass like a year ago or something, where now I'm like, okay, now I'm making money. It's like I have a little bit extra. I'm just scraping by every month, right? I'm making all these videos like every day. I'm doing that thing where I'm shooting. I'm trying to make my day as most exciting as I can. And then I'm staying up at night editing so that I can put it out the next day, because I can't put it out the next day, because the next day I'm out having fun trying to make right? So that's the cycle. And so, it's tough. It's not easy. You gotta love doing video, or else you're not gonna stick with it. And even if you love it, I'm kind of burnt out too. It's like I'm not making videos right now, and I'm like, I could be making a ton of content, but I'm just like, no, I'm waiting till the situation's perfect. I finish my shop. I do this other stuff. Yeah, it's hard. So I think the best thing is just for you to have a few like things that you're doing at the same time, and.
I mean, I think it all comes from, if you're naturally someone who's creative and wants to create things, it's like me. I wanted to create electric skateboards, but I also want to create videos. When I was a young lad, I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. I had my little, it was a little tape back then. High 8, or what it was called?
Yeah, it's High 8 or Mini DV.
Mini DV,
Yeah.
Mini DV. I had a little Panasonic Mini DV, and I used to make documentary films about my family, or if we ever went a trip somewhere, and I'd record that and try to make a little fun video. I used to love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I know what happened. The camera broke, and I had to send it away to be repaired. And then the people that repaired it were going to send it back to me, and the courier company stole it. So I lost my camera, and that was the end of my documentary film making career. But now I've got a YouTube channel with I think 20,000 subscribers, and I must admit, I'm not doing it frequently enough.
Yeah.
I can see if I upload videos every couple of days, like I can see that there's people watching them and there's people subscribing. Like I can see if I just dedicate myself to it, it would work. But you know, I'm trying to get my new company up and running as well, and I'm trying to be a dad. And
yeah.
Anyway,
it's hard. So tell me about the before we hit it where you're going. I want to talk to you a little bit about the motors, because that was the thing that you differentiate yourself from like Boosted and all the other companies, right? There's this new technology with those hub motors where the motor's stuck in the wheel, and then you jumped on that, and then you decided that that's what's gonna make the better skateboard product, right? And so you leaned heavily into that. I don't think everybody was on board, right? There's a lot of people that didn't like them. There's a lot of people that were like skeptical or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem was before I started doing it, there were no, like my Raptor 1, you probably can't see it in your shot there, but there's a Raptor 1 up there with the blue trucks.
Mm-hmm.
The Raptor 1 had a motor like this. And
an outboard motor.
An out with a belt and pulleys and stuff. And we were making them in my garage. And when you're making a lot of skateboards that have the wheel with a pulley and the motor with a pulley and a belt, the alignment of all of that becomes a bit tricky because the truck, it's a cast aluminium truck, so they're not perfect, and it's really hard to get that alignment right. You might spend 10 minutes just getting it right, and then they can wobble loose. So during that production in my garage, I sort of thought, this is not scalable. There's no way I can do a lot of these because it's just time consuming. And there are ways to engineer a design that's self-aligns and self-tensions and stuff like that. But I'm like, I like simplicity in design. So the idea of trying to engineer a self-aligning, self-tensioning system, I was just like, that's yuck. I don't want that. I want clean lines. I want beauty. Beauty's important to me. Like aesthetic stuff is important, and it has to work well. Like I want the whole package. I'm greedy. But back then there was really no other option. But there were a few people trying to make a motor inside the wheel. And in the beginning, everyone's like, that can't work. It's not going to be powerful enough. You're not going to be able to go up a hill. And then I started sampling a few that people had made. And there was a company in China that came out with one very early, 2015, I think it was. And I started getting samples, and I realized, you know what, these are actually pretty good. They weren't perfect, but they had potential. And I realized all you have to do is sort of make it a bit bigger, like a larger motor, and a few other tweaks, and you could have something really quite powerful. And that's when the Raptor 2 came out with hub motors, and our catchphrase, I guess, was the most powerful direct drive electric skateboard. And it still is today. Like there's YouTube videos of it going up against belt drive systems, and it's blitzing them. It was really powerful, but with power comes other problems as well. So managing heat, power consumption. So, it wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. My original vision was, let's get rid of the belt and the pulleys and put a motor on there, and it's clean and it's simple. But there are challenges that came from that as well. But to this date, it is the most powerful direct drive electric skateboard that was, you know, a commercially available product, you know, not just a boutique garage built thing. It's like we made 2,000 of the things, and you know, they were pretty powerful.
And what happened to that motor? Like that it's not in production anymore, right? Like you can't buy it. Like that factory didn't keep making it and selling it on their own, and because I don't think you can buy anything.
No, they stopped.
Right, you can't. I mean, you can buy. So the ones that I end up using are those regular ones that everyone. I don't know. There's a website that everyone buys from, and those if you use two of them, I guess they're kind of wimpy, right? They're probably, because they're smaller. I don't think they're as big as yours. I think yours were like bigger than all of them, and they're longer or something,
big.
Right?
Yeah,
they were like
long.
the diameter was bigger, and then the length of it was also longer. So the ones that are currently available from the Chinese market, and that you can get them on any different, you know, color and stuff. Those were okay, but if you do an all wheel, like if you do all four wheels, you put motors and you put 4 controllers. That's very powerful. That's what I had in my thing, and it just goes up hills like nobody's business. Doesn't even know you're on it. It's crazy, right? So I'm like,
everyone that doesn't like hub motors, the people that say, oh, they're no good, they've never used them. You know what I mean?
They never used them.
So they don't actually know because they haven't used it. They don't realize,
or they haven't used it correctly. Yeah, like maybe one or two are not powerful enough if you get those commercially available ones. But you know, with yours probably were. I never rode one of your skateboards. But it would make sense that you made them bigger. Then that means, you know. But you could also could have gone smaller and maybe put them all 4, right? And all 4 wheels, and then that would have done the same thing.
And it's probably more efficient. Where if you have big motors and pump lots of power into them, they're going to work great, but they're not necessarily as efficient. If you shrink down the motors a little bit and have 4 of them, in theory, it could be even more efficient than what we're having. And this is sort of the sad thing about my company no longer being around, and Inboard, they also were trying to make really good hub motors. There are no really talented engineers working on optimizing the hub motor designs. It's sort of forgotten now because I'm not doing it, and some of the other companies that were big don't exist. So sadly, there's a chance that the hub motor concept just fades away because there's no one investing in it. Like we had another edition for the Raptor 3 that we were working on, and we could get 30% more power out of them in the same size. So we were trying to do it. We had the designs ready to go into production and start testing them, and they would have been better all around. They were fully waterproof, water sealed. They had a full aluminium core, like a massive aluminium solid mass inside them, so better cooling, better heat coefficiencies in the design, and an even bigger stator, more copper. So they would have been really good and lighter in weight as well. But sadly, they'll never see the light of day. And I don't think anyone's going to do it either, because it's risky. It's clearly not profitable, but it's sad in a way that the cool stuff that we could have doesn't happen because people don't want to take the risk and don't want to invest in it. And that's bit of a sad day.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I guess it's a thing because you're talking about tiny motors. Because I think there's probably some advancements in the bigger motors, slightly bigger because of all the little scooters and stuff, right? Those are in mass production. Again, those big companies, Uber, Lime, all those big companies literally dump billions of dollars into buying those and throwing them off in every city in the U.S. And so there's probably some innovation going on in those markets, but that's a different motor. It's bigger.
It's bigger. Yeah.
It's a bigger motor.
That's the challenge.
This is a challenge.
The smaller you want your motor, the more innovative you have to be, and the more advanced technology you have to try to implement into it to get it. If you look at what Tesla's doing, and some of the other large scale EV companies, their motor technology, it's like the amount of time and energy and research and development that goes into making their motors more efficient it's the most important engineering challenge. In a scooter or an electric bike, it's not that critical. They're not trying to make them like 5% more efficient, 10% more efficient, or it's just not happening. And in a skateboard, because of the constraints of, the thing, it's that big and it's only that high off the ground and the wheels are only sort of that big, and there are these constraints that you can't really change, otherwise it's no longer a skateboard. So you're forced to design things that fit in a wheel, and you need to be taking risks with your engineering and come up with new ideas. So there are things that haven't been fully tested, like the configuration of the magnets, the Hallback array, some of the ideas that are sort of trickling down from the EV industry. So yeah, sadly, no one's really doing it as far as I'm aware in a skateboard.
Yeah, I think with Tesla, I don't know, have you ever seen like anybody take a Tesla motor apart?
Yeah. There's a YouTube channel that I really love. This guy, what's his name? Oh, I'm having a mind blank now, but he's like an old school car manufacturing legend, and he fully
Monroe.
Monroe, yeah.
Sandy
and
Monroe.
That's it. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this, any of your subscribers are watching this, and they want to learn more about the motors that go in electric vehicles and how they're made, Sandy Monroe, look it up. That guy strips them down, and he even pulls the stators apart in the motor so you can see how they're
how many laminates. When we first took our one apart at EV West, right? I was over there, EV West, working for a while and stuff. We're blown away about the cooling system. They have a full jacket around it where, like, liquid, so they're liquid cooling the whole outer, stator. And then the rotor itself, it's cool. They have this thing that goes down the shaft and then it comes back out. So they're removing heat from the actual shaft of that motor, right? Of the rotor and stuff. So I'm like, that's how they could make their motors, because their motors are small. I mean, they're like 9-inch, I think, 8-inch diameter or whatever. They're like watermelon size.
So efficient and so powerful.
So powerful, like 500 horsepower out of a tiny little motor like this. It's pretty crazy.
It's incredible. It is incredible, and imagine that on a skateboard. Like, obviously, it has to be shrunk down, but that level of engineering could make skateboards with motors that are so light, so small.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like there's a motor there, and they would be superior to everything. But unless I find $1 million to blow on R&D, it's not happening.
Dude, I don't know. Maybe the thing would have been to go smaller motors, but more, right? But then again, it's kind of hard to keep the price down of every controller and every motor. But on my skateboard, for example, guess what my range is? I made this crazy
I don't know, 50, well, I guess I'm talking kilometers, but probably 30 or 40 miles.
About 40 miles. Yeah, 40 miles. But I do have 50 cells in there. Right, so it's pretty big and heavy, and it's got 4 motors and stuff, and it's pretty powerful, and it just goes. You could make something smaller that goes less. I mean, I think people would have been fine with 20 miles, right? What was the range of your boards?
20 to 30 kilometers. I mean, it's so variable depending on the conditions.
How hard you drive,
I'm starting to realize these days that you either want, like you've probably seen some of these yourself, but people call them all-terrain or cruisers, where they're the bigger pneumatic wheels,
tires.
like 8-inch wheels, and slightly longer and bigger trucks. The guys that are making those, there's a few companies that are putting massive batteries, like 1,500 watt-hour packs in these things, and the reason they do it is because they love jumping on it and doing day trips. You can ride up to the mountain and have a picnic and cruise there, and like it's a whole day of riding, but you end up with a massive board that you can't move around that easily. So there's definitely these different categories that are emerging in the industry. So for me, lately, most of my riding has been on this little short mini deck, 2 hub motors, a small battery, only like 288 watt hour, so relatively small, not as small as boosted boards were, but I can ride for an hour. The thing is so lightweight. It's always in my car. It's just fun. So there's definitely different levels of this, and that's what's exciting as well. As the industry evolves, you start to see these different categories of electric skateboard. But
well,
I think the other thing that will happen is the battery technology is only getting better. I don't know if you watched the Tesla battery day, those cells that they're trying to create. Eventually, you won't need to have a massive skateboard. You can fit maybe 1,000 watt hour pack in a small skateboard. So, but who can stand on those things for 5 hours anyway,
No, it's nobody needs to go. Same thing with cars. Nobody needs to go 600 miles. Unless you're traveling, you better put like a fast charger there, because then you can carry, half the battery, and then your car's half the cost, but you can still
lower cost, lower weight,
Yeah, you go through less tires and tear and wear. There's a whole lot of benefits to not having a giant battery on board. And that's the thing I think that will trickle down, I think, to these markets. So now that you find yourself here, I know that you made a couple of videos where you were answering some questions, because I don't know, I guess you seem to be having some hate from some people in the industry, right? What's going on with that? Like, who?
Yeah.
Is it customers? Do you have hate from customers?
No, it's not. The strange thing is, the people that are the biggest haters in the electric skateboarding game, they weren't necessarily hurt, or there was very minimal collateral damage from the closure of my company. I personally lost about $200,000. Like, I got hammered by it, but the collateral damage was quite minimal in terms of people losing out on money. Because, as you know from running websites, like if someone wants to do a chargeback, they just go to their bank and they get their money back. PayPal, press a button and you get your money back. So the people are just upset. People don't like failure, I suppose. It leaves a bad taste in their mouth. Maybe they were brought up and got told by their parents that they were a bad child because they weren't perfect. But the reality is, we're humans. No one's perfect.
Is that because there's no longer service for their product, or is that mostly why I think people are? Because I guess if you spend $2,000 on a board and then you don't have wheels, I think that's one of the deals that some people are complaining, right? They want wheels, or they want something like that.
Yeah, that would suck.
So no more support.
I definitely acknowledge that, and I think one of the things that makes it a little bit better is that a lot of the parts that went into the Raptor were very modular. They were very DIY parts. I just put them together in a way that made it like a finished product. But the motor controller, the FOC box that was in it, you can take it out and put in anything. You can still buy that product. So if you have a problem with the electronics, you can still get it.
Yeah. So the main part of the board, it's still available.
It still works. You can get the remote control, because it's compatible with any remote controller. Mm-hmm. The motor controller can work with any motor. So there's some parts that you can't get anymore, but the complete unit is not a complete write-off. So I think most people understand that, and they can appreciate that the modular design was a benefit to them at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of haters out there. You probably got people hating on you for just trying to make videos and trying to be who you are, and that's the thing. Like, the people that put themselves out there and try to do things in a way that gets them attention, I guess, making videos and trying to come up with a new product or trying to do something different. It just, people see that, and guess what? If they don't like the look of you or how you speak, or they don't like you for whatever reason, they just tell you. And it happens more that there's haters saying that they hate stuff than there are people who like stuff and say that they like it. And it's pretty sad.
The silent majority, right? It's like the majority of people are just silent. They're just enjoying their board, or whatever. Because how many units did you end up selling?
Of the Raptor, 2?
Yeah.
We did it was about 2,000, just
about
shy,
2,000. Yeah. And then you had Raptor 1.
4 batches of 500. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Raptor 1, we did about 160 of those in my garage. The Fuckbox Unity, done about 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Of those, getting up near 6,000. And I mean, that's a product that still exists. It's in stock at my new website. So people, one of the things that people really hated about Enertion, and why we sort of always had problems to deal with in social media and stuff like that, is we could never keep up with demand. So things things grew so rapidly. Whenever that happened, and you would know this from your business, when it ramps up, you can never keep up. So you might order 100 of something because you think that's what you're going to sell in that period. But then you sold 200. So next time you order 200 of that thing, but then you actually needed 500. And so that happened with Enertion for 2 years. We just grew so quickly. We never caught up. So there was long wait times. People hate waiting. No one wants, like with Amazon, you get stuff, boom, it's at your house the next day or the same day. So we always had that. We could never get on top of that. And the reality is I would have needed about $1 million to dump into the supply chain to get all of the production up to speed, and then I would have lost $1 million if the company closed down. So it's the thing. You try to balance it, and it's really tough, and we failed.
Yeah.
So,
and you didn't take investors, right? So it was just whatever was coming in. That's how fast you were growing, basically.
Yeah. The only money that got put into it was we got some government grants, which were helpful. My own personal money, my family invested in it, but no one wants to invest in the electric skateboarding industry at this point, I don't think, unfortunately. So, but it is what it is. I mean, you live and learn, and there was minimal collateral damage, and I've started up again. And like, the thing is with this, now with my new business model, we've been able to produce this and sell it at a lower cost, like a lower price, a retail price, $100 less, and I've got it in stock because it's just simpler. Like before I had 60 different suppliers, like screws, bearings, wheels, trucks, deck, like plastic injection molded, all this crazy stuff that you had to coordinate and have it arrive in perfect quality on a set date. This is one factory. I order, they produce it, they're always on time, like they're really good at hitting their deadline. And they understand how my business needs to work, so they are working with me to ensure that there's always stock. And I got the next 12 months, we have forecasted what we need, and the orders have been placed, and the production has been scheduled, and we're not going to run out of stock of this ever. And it's cheaper than what we could ever sell it before, because I don't have all of the overheads now. So it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah. So what's the? I do know that you mentioned in your video that there's some controversy there, that some people were accusing you that that maybe you didn't own this product or you were selling this even though you owed some people or something. What was that all about? That was not from users. That's from people like that used to work for you or people in the industry or people in the community, right?
I think the problem is a lot of people don't understand that a company is a legal entity. If you create your own company, it is essentially a legal entity. It can have its own bank account. It can own things. You know, it's the same in America, right?
Yeah.
LLC, I think you call it. But in Australia, it's proprietary limited. It's an entity, just like Jason Potter is an entity. I'm a human. I can get a loan at the bank. A company can do the same. And when a company has to shut down because it's not viable anymore and you know, can't continue, it has to go through a process. And in Australia, it's called liquidation. And basically, a bunch of accountants and a bunch of lawyers do everything according to the law to finalize that company's
assets,
yeah. Close it down, shut down the bank, make sure everything's been sorted out. And it's a long process. But the director of a company, so the person who created the company and who is officially like an official representative of that company, that director, which it's me, I'm no longer the director of that company, but I can start up another company. There's no laws against that. I can work in the same industry. I can do whatever I want, essentially, with a new company and start up again. And most people just don't realize that that's a legal and permissible thing that can be done. And that's all I did. And people don't like it because they are saying I'm a quitter or I just, you know, whatever they're saying. They don't like the fact that I'm starting again. And it's a funny concept, that, because imagine if you are a university student and your first exam in your first year, maybe you fail that exam and then the university says, nope, you failed once, you're kicked out of the university and you can never learn another topic at university ever again, game over. Imagine if they applied that to your favorite sporting team when they lose their first game of the season and they get kicked out of the competition. There'd be no innovation. There'd be no new products. There'd be nothing. There'd be no jobs for anyone. So the reality is people just think that you can't start up again, and they think that it's somehow negative or bad, but in fact, it's pretty normal.
Yeah. I mean, you should be able to start another company. You know, you got to fail again or succeed. I mean, how are you not going to succeed if you never start again, right?
Exactly. And so, look, this product, there wasn't a patent on that product.
Exactly. Because it started as an open source.
It's open source.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, but there's other people that are. So you changed it. I mean, this is a thing. The original product didn't look like this. You spent quite a bit of time and effort developing it into this new form, right? That new and improved form factor.
So, like, if you look back over time, that's definitely true. Like, it started like this, and now, you know, then it was that, and then ended up like this, and now it's this orange thing, right?
Yeah.
But, like the version that we have now is essentially very similar to what was available at Enertion. I've just added a few more changes to make it just more user-friendly. And, you know, it's effectively like the same software that people had on their Raptor. It's the same software. So nothing, because it was all open source.
So it's backwards compatible. That's a good thing.
It's all backwards compatible. So there's no, like, it's the same thing in that regard. You can plug any of the original Enertion software that we developed into it, and it will work. And that's all open source software because it was developed on the original VESC project, and the original VESC project, which is what all of this technology is based around, that has also taken the firmware that was developed for this, specifically this single MCU. It's got one little chip. You can see it on
it's like
here
a
little
one
bit better.
controller. So it's
Yeah,
one
it's got-
controller with two power sections.
It's under that little sticker there, but it's
Ah.
one
So
one
it's one
MCU.
brain. It's one brain with two power sections.
Exactly.
Oh,
and
okay,
that
okay.
firmware, my company, Enertion, paid engineers to develop that, but because it was all based on open source, we have to share it back to everyone. So it was
community.
all
Yeah.
open and available. And then the original developer, Benjamin Vedder, the guy who created the VESC project, he took that firmware, which was a fork of his. We made it separate. He took it and put it back into the original branch. So
okay.
it's supported by all of the software now. And the day that happened was the day that I thought to myself, you know what? I am going to start up a new company, and I am going to reach out to the factories that produced it, and I'm going to try to help them clear some debts, because they had some debts because Enertion placed massive orders with them, and before all of the parts got delivered to Enertion, Enertion sadly closed down and didn't pay them for the balance of these orders. So the factories were sort of sitting there with inventory
Components.
that they never got paid for. And I
Yeah.
said to them, I will help you clear all that stuff so that you've got no debt, as long as you're willing to work with me again after I help you. And they agreed, and they said, yeah, if you can clear the debts out, they'll work with me again and allow me to order the products again from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that seems like a win-win for everyone.
It is.
Except for the people who now are competing with you in that using your own same design, right? Because you designed this, right? It is open source, right?
yeah,
It is
so-
open source, so someone else can use it. I'm in the same boat right now. I designed this little boards to populate with batteries, 100% open source. And then I offer it build in my website, but I'm like, you don't have to buy it from me. You can buy it from my suppliers. And in the contents in my website, if you go, all my list of contents, they're all hyperlinks, and you can click and you
Yes.
can go to the factory in China where I order it. So you can buy it, and a lot of this stuff is like an AliExpress. So it's not like you have to order like a huge amount. You could just order, right? So people are always like sending me links like, oh, look at these bastards, they copy your thing on AliExpress, Alibaba has them, now they're on Amazon. You can buy my board that I designed, and I'm like, I don't care, like, this is open source, it's like you can go buy it from them, but if you buy it from them, it's like I can't guarantee the quality, I can't guarantee that they're using, that there's not like a weird thing. My name might be in it because they're literally downloading the files, the Gerber files, and printed those boards, right? I go, but I don't know how they're printing it. It's like I'm using a high quality shop where I can control the quality of the board and all the components that go in there, right? So I'm like, this is out there. I think you're probably somewhere in a similar situation, right? Where you're offering this product, but it's also available through some other sellers or something?
So the exact product that you see here is unique in the sense that the circuit board design, the schematic that is used to create that circuit board is not open source. So the
okay.
actual layout of all of the components
Okay.
is not open. The firmware that goes into it and the original schematics that this was based on are open source. So we had to pay engineers to create this, the actual hardware. So this particular version of hardware is unique, and there is no other source of it at this point.
Okay.
The the engineers that used to work for Enertion have gone and started working at another company and have basically made a very similar, very similar single core MCU. So if you think about the architecture, the hardware design, this was the first single core MCU, so one processor, two motors, in the world for electric skateboards. And it's very good for people who want to make electric skateboards because it just is easier. The software that we created to go with it sets up the motors in sync, and it does it much faster, and you're not programming two separate channels. You're programming one channel. It's just easier, right? So Enertion was the first to bring that to market. And it was pretty spectacular. It's pretty awesome. It still is. I mean, it's a great piece of hardware. But now there is another company who basically got the engineers to create their version of a single core MCU, and it's very similar. So yeah, so
it's not the same one.
But it's not the same one.
I see.
It's a little bit different. So, but the concept is the same. It's a single core MCU. So now there are two, and they've sort of gone down a different pathway as well. So they're trying to sort of target a premium market. They're trying to make higher voltage stuff, and it's much more expensive. For me, what I want to do and what I am doing is I actually want to go the other way. I want to make the product more affordable. I mean, the performance is already fantastic. Like, I don't personally believe that you should be pouring money, R&D, into 1% or 2% performance gains, because the average Joe, when they're riding along on the street, they don't know really if it's processing something slightly different. They don't get a real world benefit. So it becomes difficult to get them to pay you more for something that is not detectable in the average electric skateboard journey. So for me, what I'm going to be doing, and you'll see this if you follow me a little bit more, you'll see a new version of this coming soon where it's even cheaper again. So what my philosophy is at this point is I don't want to make things so expensive that the average person can't get it. I want to make it good stuff, but just more affordable. So we're going to be doing a few things that just make it more accessible, because
optimize it for pricing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Focus just on that, optimize my cost structure in my business model, minimize my overheads. Then I can offer a product that is really good quality, but just at lower prices, and my volume will go up. Like, the more volume you can do, the scale, the economy of scale is what it's called, where it just gets cheaper to produce. If you're doing 10,000 a year versus 2,000 a year, it's cheaper, and then I can pass that on to people. So that's my main focus for the next 12 months is optimizing. Yeah.
You're just going to specialize on the controller, on the
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes
just
sense.
Electric skateboards, two motors, motor controller. That's it. So very ultra niche, but that is what we've got a good track record at doing. You know, we've been pioneers in that with my former company, and I think my vision for what the future looks like for people who want to make their own electric skateboard. Most people don't want to spend $400 or $500 on a thing like this. They want to spend $150, or they want it to be cheap and reliable. And
what is the price on that right now, currently on that version? Yeah.
So this guy, the Foxbox Unity Plus, it is $199 in US dollars.
Okay.
And back in the Enertion day, it was $299 when it first came out, and we had higher costs associated with it because it was a new product. It was $300, but now it's like 30% less, 33% less. $200 I think is pretty good. We always wanted it to be.
You're back to the
affordable.
original Vetter. Wasn't the original Vetter like $100? This is essentially two of them.
So the single motor controllers back in the day used to be around, like this guy would cost you between normally around 160 bucks for one motor. Now you can get this guy for two motors, and it's only a little bit more expensive at $299. But my goal, I want to get the price to about 150 bucks. I think
now you're competing with the Chinese ones, like the ones that I bought. Because I want to say that's how much I paid for mine. I think I want to say it's like $150 for. Oh, but you know what? Mine was the quad. I'll have to look again, but I don't remember. Yeah.
You can buy motor controllers for like 50 bucks. Like the cheapest ones I've seen. But they're just not that good. There's still a balance there. You either get the cheapest thing that you can possibly find, and it may not work with the motors, or it may not work with the different hand controllers. So there are limitations. So they're not programmable. That's the biggest thing, right? Exactly. So for me,
you get what you get. Like there's no this thing, you plug it into your computer. What's the software, by the way, that you use to
the VESC tool is the official tool that works with this. There's also the Fockbox tool, which is a modified version, which is just a bit easier for beginners. But you can get apps now on Apple, Android. Because it's open source, there's at least 3 or 4 other software developers making software that's compatible with this. So the options are really starting to broaden.
Is that similar to the one I originally, a long time ago, I got one that was called BLDC?
That's that would have been the BLDC tool.
BLDC 2. So it's similar to that?
It's the same. I think they just call it the VESC tool. That's the original.
Okay. That's the original.
So that's the one everyone probably has looked at least once, but it's sort of confusing to a lot of people who aren't.
It's a lot of tabs. There's a lot of it's if you just want to set it up, you can't just like open it up unless you know your way around it. You can't just open it up, be like, oh yeah, it's my voltage, my thing, and then out. You have to like look at it, stare at it for a while, and be like, okay, which one is this one? Just trying to set up the little controller, the UART or the whatever. It took me a while. I had to sit there and just scratch my head for a little bit, and then you're like, oh, was it on this tab? Or there's like 20 tabs to go. You know what I mean? Like, so it could get a little bit. It's not super intuitive.
And I think the same probably goes like have you built an electric bike before?
I haven't. No.
No, me either. I've made an electric scooter and electric skateboards, but DIY, there's still like you're still gonna have to solve a few problems. I think that's for me anyway. There's the fun part of it, like how do we get this to work? But it shouldn't be so complex that it scares people away either. Yeah. Like there's a fine balance there, and I think when it comes to an electric skateboard, when this thing came out, the software that we developed for the Android app, you could set up your motors, set up everything. There was only like 2 screens or 3 screens, and within about 60 seconds, everything was set up and working. No computer programming required. So that still is available, that app, and it's compatible with that via Bluetooth.
That's cool.
Why a lot of people like this, because it is a bit easier.
Yeah. And what are the tech specs on it? Like, what's the max voltage that you can set one of these up with?
So this is max 60 volts.
60 volts, which is 13S, 12S.
12S is about as far as you'd go. If you had a boosted board, some of those batteries were like 54 volts or something, because they're so small and the voltage sag.
And those are lithium iron phosphate too. They're different. They're not lithium ion.
The original one was different, but the latest boosted extended ones were lithium ion.
They did. They changed the.
Yeah, they went back. The first boosted was the
A123s. There were these green battery
A120.
packs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
are cool.
so
Now we're getting a bunch of them from all kinds of different things now. They're becoming kind of popular in the market right now on secondhand
yeah,
market.
right.
But they're degraded. They were a lot of them come from like they come from full size like buses, like city buses. So
right.
they were hybrid. So they had these little batteries, and they would use this to power like big motors. But that means they were used to hell. I mean, and they were like beat, right? They're small battery that would like really push it really hard. So by the time we get them, they're like at 50%, state of charge, state of like health or whatever. And so I mean, they were big and heavy to begin with when they were brand new compared to modern lithium ion batteries, right? So then once you're getting them like at 50% degradation, yeah, these things are like terrible. They're like not that usable, right?
Probably good for a power wall. Or
Good for a
something,
power wall,
maybe, or-
something that, if you're not going to break them apart from that battery pack they come in, you could throw them in there. Because they do have a ton of like cycle life. These are like 5,000, 6,000 life cycles. So they will last a long time. That's the one thing that they had going for them. And they would like give a lot of power out. Like you can have that little battery pack that boosted had, I think they could like load it with like 50 amps or something, right?
Yeah.
Like what was
they
those
were
controllers?
High output.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which
it
I
takes
think
its toll.
Back then was the only option because there were the lithium, like the 18650 cells.
Yeah, they were
back
all
in
wimpy.
2013, they just couldn't do it. But now,
Super wimpy
the
cells.
Samsung 40Ts, they're a fantastic cell.
We had the BTC 6s, the Sony. Those are like 20 amp continuous ones. And we got those from, so there's a cool thing about being on the secondhand market. You get like all these companies that go bankrupt.
Yeah.
and then you end up getting their stuff, right? And we got, I guess like almost 20 pallets, I think, of batteries from Alta. Alta was this like off-roading motorcycle. And they all use Sony VTC6 cells. And we got just like 10 pallets of brand new cells. And I was trying to sell them. I think at that point, I remember sending you an email or something. Like, hey, man, if you need high-quality batteries, because as you know, getting high-quality batteries, it's hard. Like, you can't buy from Sony. You can't buy from LG. You can't buy from any of these top manufacturers. They won't sell it to you unless you're going to order like 20 million or some weird, and they have to approve your design, right? And so whatever you end up getting on the secondary market, it's either like B quality from China, right? Which are like, who knows, they're mystery cells that they're wrapped to look like an LG cell or a Panasonic, or you're getting like this. It's the only way you can get legit cells. It's from someone that goes bankrupt, or they change the design and they no longer are going to use that type of cell. They're going to change to another form factor, and they have a warehouse full of batteries, and then they sell it to you. But it's usually always like they're 2 years old, 4 years old. They've been sitting on some warehouse, But even that is better. Like a legit LG cell or Panasonic cell is way better, even if it's like 5 years old, than some mystery battery cell from China that you don't know what it is. It's just like, what is it? Like,
yeah, that is the problem. I don't know. Have you been to China to look at the battery manufacturer? Yeah, I've been to a few, and you can get, if you want cheap lithium-ion batteries that are no name, no brand, you can get them. And if you want to have it with a Samsung label on it, you can get that.
You can get it. Yes.
You can get that if you want it to say that it can
Panasonic.
do a certain thing. Whatever you want, you can
whatever
get it.
label you want to put on them. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a cost thing. So you want the best A grade Samsung or whatever sells, Sony, you can get it and they'll charge you for it, but then how do you know it's that?
Yeah, you never know.
So then you say, well, we need a certificate show us the purchase order from Sony. Show us the purchase, and then we're not going to show you that because it's so then
Because it doesn't
do you even
exist.
know?
It doesn't exist. You have to
Exactly.
be like a huge company like Anchor, right? Like Anchor can buy directly from those companies because they have to submit their design, and they're like, "What are you going to use these batteries? Oh, on those power packs? Okay, so here we go." And you have to
Yeah.
buy 10 million of them or something, right? So then when Anchor somehow like changes, and then they get rid of it, like that's the only way that you know you can get legit cells. But in China, you never know.
Yeah.
It's always like mystery cells. You know what I mean? Like mystery.
Yeah, I
And
guess that's why Tesla is vertically integrating. You know,
Yeah.
they're going to mine the lithium and the cobalt and all the other stuff, and they're going to go from there to a cell.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
That's the only way that you can control quality. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they could probably trust their partners, Panasonic, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think they can't trust them in the innovation side of things because, like, people seem to think that lithium has advanced so much in the last 10 years, but they haven't, dude. Like, the cells that were in the 2012 Tesla and they're now in the Teslas, they're not much that different. Maybe
Yeah.
there's slight changes here and there, but it's not like, hey, there's 10 years of innovation that should have happened. You know what I mean? Like, but it's not. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah,
So
it seems like a lot of the innovations aren't necessarily the cell anymore. It's all like slight changes in the manufacturing processes to get a 2% or a 3% gain or a little cost reduction there, or all these tiny little 1%, 2% things add up to be a 15% gain.
Yeah.
But it still looks like it's still the same thing essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the cell diameter is
bigger.
increasing with the latest one.
But it's not like that's groundbreaking. We had 31s, 120s, forever.
Yeah.
We had whatever size you want, you can get in China, It's
Yeah.
just they're odd. Like, the 26 650s, they're not new. Those have been around forever, but like they're not as popular as the 18650 because they weren't on laptops. Right? The laptops were really the ones that made the 18650. And the 18650 would have been dead if it wasn't for Tesla picking them up and choosing them as their cell. Yeah, because all the
Exactly,
laptops
yeah.
changed to pouch cells, right? That's the
Yeah.
new form. And in fact, I don't know. Did you ever look into using pouch cells for your?
I had a
electric
few
skateboard?
suppliers trying to get me to use some, but you just don't know what they are. Some of
Exactly.
them. So they.
But here's the
you
thing,
could get
though.
really nice, thin, like
Yeah.
perfect for a skateboard. But then you sort of don't know, like, where is this coming from? What
But
actually is it? So
Here's the thing. So the 18650 was such a great cell because they were made in trillions of them, right? For 20 plus years. I think now it's the pouch cells are probably the best cells that you can get because there's like billions of these things, now. This is
true.
where all the innovation is in these pouch cells. And so you probably could get like a bunch of like even probably the rejects or secondhand or whatever from the factories that are making these are probably going to be very, very compelling. And on a skateboard, it kind of makes sense to use pouch because then it allows you to keep the deck small, right? Isn't there someone already put them inside the deck, but they made a deck that doesn't bend as much
there's a
because you
few
don't want to
companies.
fold them.
I think Evolve at one point years ago were using pouch. I think X-Way were using some pouches in their fully integrated monocoque deck. Some of the high-end sort of the e-bike guys, I've seen them using pouches to create their massive packs. So it is interesting that when you look at the mobile phone industry and what they've had to do to get bigger capacity there, you're right, because that's where all the R&D went. Of course it's going to get better there. So, it's strange that it doesn't filter down more into electric skateboards, but maybe that's just because DIY people just know how to put the cells together now. They're more familiar.
Yeah, well,
with
it's a different
spot
application too. Like this will never exceed like whatever, like 300 milliamps or whatever. I guess
Yeah.
maybe if you're doing too many things or whatever, the phone starts getting hot, right? But like on a skateboard, it's like if you're heavy, if you're going up a hill, or you just want to punch it, that's quite a bit of power. By the way, so that's 60 volts. What's the amperage that unity?
This guy. So in the battery, you mean, or at the motor? Because you can control them separately.
Separately.
In this.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can.
What is at the battery? What did it consume at the battery? What's the most?
Safety wise, I mean, the connector on this has got an XT90. So
XT90.
a lot of people will look at things like that and say, well, it's only rated for 90 amps.
No.
And it can go higher, but the reality is most batteries for an electric skateboard probably aren't outputting much more than about 100 amps anyway. So that's on the battery side, 100 amps
Really?
output.
That'll
is-
consume 100 amps on acceleration?
Yeah. You can
Oh.
do it. It
Holy
depends
crap.
what sort of motor and drivetrain you have.
crap.
But yeah, 100.
So that's 6 kilowatt.
Yeah, easy.
Woo!
Yeah.
That's 5 horsepower.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
That's a lot of power.
People are making some crazy electric skateboards with this thing, and you can get even bigger ones, more powerful. But the thing, like the
Yeah.
argument that I make,
You don't need
can't
it.
stand on it anymore. Like
No.
it's too powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need that even in a car, right? Like any more than like 100 kilowatt system in a car, it's like what? You do donuts, you're gonna
It's
like
yeah,
and after
it's-
2-3 seconds you're up to speed. Your car's like tapering down in the power. Like what do you need that much
Yeah.
power? You don't really need 500 horsepower. Like there's no
Yeah.
application when you need that. You might want it, you might use it, you might, to drift or whatever, but there's no need for that much power.
There's no need. So there's no bottleneck. There's no real bottleneck
Wow.
at this level. The bottleneck is still sort of the battery.
The battery and the motors.
Because you're constrained by the size of a skateboard once again. If you want a battery that outputs 100 amp continuous, it's a pretty big battery. Like,
Yeah.
it just gets bigger and bigger
Well,
and bigger the more...
you can get lipos or you can build a bigger
Yeah,
battery.
true.
Yeah.
You get a LiPo and output 300 amps or something. And
Yeah. But then you're not going to
But-
go very far.
you're
Because
not gonna go
lipos
any far.
are,
Yeah.
they're not very energy dense, right? So, and they don't last very long. So by the way, lipos are just like any other battery. They will give you 300 amps. They will give you some crazy amounts, but they're dying every cycle. So if you get 100 cycles out of them, then you're lucky, right?
Yeah,
So if you want
exactly.
a battery to last a long time, you can't load it up with like 10 Cs or
Yeah.
something.
I think what most people are trying to achieve in electric skateboarding is a bigger battery. Don't over discharge it. Sort of keep it in a healthy, peak at 100 amps, but you really don't want to be drawing that much current out of it. You want it to be healthy. You want it to be cool. So
Yeah, I'll give you an
That's-
example. My build, 50 cells, right? And mine, they're like these big cells. They're like MH1s, I think. So they're like 30,
right.
3,200
build it?
milliamp hours. Yeah, I built it
you
myself.
built the battery, yeah.
And I didn't even bother to put a BMS. By the way, I don't recommend this. Everyone should use a BMS. I'm crazy. I'm irresponsible. No BMS. And I charge it like once every 6 months or something because I don't use it
Yeah.
that much. But like it's never drifted apart. It's never because my batteries have a pretty easy life. Whenever I use it, it's just like I don't know. I think maybe mine. I think maxes out like a 40, 50 amps or something for a few seconds.
Which is still heaps.
Yeah, it's still
It's crazy. Like a lot of people get wrapped up in the specs and they're like, we need more, we need higher voltage, more amps, which yes, if there are certain applications, maybe you're a heavy guy and you're
going up a hill.
build
You live at
which has
the top of a hill.
yeah, there might be certain applications where you need a 6, 7, 8 kilowatt machine, but most people don't. And like the other thing is, I don't know about in America, but voltage limits. If you're working with voltages over 50 volts in Australia, it's an occupational health and safety issue, and you need to be a licensed electrician to work with high voltage. And that's why you don't see many electric bikes. Like if you go to the bike shop and buy an electric bike, they're not running 100-volt systems. They're running lower voltage to be within the government regulations. So there's some safety issues as well that need to be discussed when you get these crazy high-powered things that people got. It's a bomb, and if something goes wrong, it's dangerous. So I'm sort of going to be trying to focus on more like consumer-friendly technology and keeping it like, even though this is still, you can make a really powerful electric skateboard, most people never even use the full specs.
Potential,
most of the Chinese boards that you get, the motor controllers in them are only running 25 amps. Mm-hmm. That's the max.
Yeah.
So
that means you're always packing them. You're always like running them at like close to peak, which is why they don't last. Because they never have. I don't know that thing that yours seems like it has a built-in chunky piece of aluminum, right? That is like a heatsink.
Yeah. So
mm-hmm.
like the whole thing. I don't know if I can.
The whole bottom. Oh yeah.
And the top and the bottom, it's like pretty solid.
Machine aluminum.
Chunk of aluminium. Yeah. And there's also thermistors in there. Like if the MOSFETs get too hot, it will gradually reduce the current that's running through the system.
It will throttle back. It won't just die. It'll throttle back.
So it's sort of hard to destroy it because it knows if you're trying to run too much current, which it's sort of hard to do. But if you're running 100 amps peak.
What's the use of that orange? That's like a silicon cover, right? Why did you do that?
Well, I just thought it looked cool.
Okay.
was one of the reasons. But in terms of like manufacturing, to create silicon molds is much cheaper than creating injection molded parts. Okay. So the molds are more affordable. And at the scale that we're doing, like the volume that we were doing, it just lined up better in terms of the costs. But the other cool thing you can do when you design parts out of silicon, see that?
Oh yeah, the little door.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the focus on my camera.
Yeah, okay. And that's the programming port, right?
Yeah, so all the ports have a nice little cover, and it just slots in there. So it just keeps the dust and debris and stuff. Like it's not waterproof.
Okay.
It's nothing like that, but it's nice. It keeps all the you don't want little bits of like metal or solder or something getting in on those pins.
Yeah.
And shorting it out, because that will end your motor controller's life.
Yeah, and I see you're using that original connector, that XT90 connector. That's the anti-spark.
Yeah, we've put
right?
that on there because people are making such big batteries now. Yeah. Every time they connect it with one of these older versions, a huge inrush current. Yeah, and it destroys the components over time.
And then, some people don't put a switch, so that's how they just want to turn it on and off by disconnecting it. So every time you do that, you basically are ruining your connector. So that's
you're ruining the connector. You're sending a huge amount of current into the resistors and the parts that are in there.
Capacitors,
and eventually they can fail prematurely just because they don't like it. I mean,
they don't like it.
They don't like getting hit with huge amounts of power running in. So this little guy on here has a built-in resistor, which pretty much reduces the current in rush by about 5 times. So
Yeah, so
stops the spark.
it's like a physical pre-charge circuit.
Yeah.
So when you're connecting it, it literally connects through the resistor first, and then once you keep putting it in there, then it makes the full power connector. Yeah.
Exactly. So hopefully we just end up with a little bit more longevity with the product as well. So, you know, those little tweaks that you can do over time, if you can make your product more reliable and improve the life of them, customers are the winners at the end of the day, you know. So
yeah,
that's sort of
but that means that you've shifted, because you were selling a product that was ready for the customer to use, and now, because you're concentrating on the controller part of the electric skateboard, now you're basically have to deal with a bunch of DIY people. You're talking to my people.
Yeah. Well, that's what I started with, man. When I started my company, we were making DIY parts. So I got very good at helping people solve most of the problems people have are not that complicated. Like, it's, where do I plug this thing, or where, you know, so we started with that. But one of the problems we found, when you have a lot of customers who are trying to build stuff that they know nothing about, you end up with hundreds and hundreds of emails, and you can only do, I don't know how many emails you can do in a day, but like 100 emails is a lot of work a day. And I remember back in the day, we were getting 300 emails a day on how to build stuff. And that's when I stopped focusing on the standalone DIY and went a complete skateboard.
Let's sell them something they can just turn on and hop on and go for a ride. Yeah.
Exactly. Something that's ready to go. And, you know, but now I'm going back to what I was originally doing, just doing the DIY part. So
you know what? Video is the key. You create how-tos, right? You just do, like, here's a project I'm going to build. You run through the whole thing. That's essentially what I was doing. You know, I'm like, I'm just going to show you how to do the thing that I want to do, and don't ask me questions, because you just go watch the video, you know? And I would get, like, also hundreds of messages, and, you know.
Yeah. And you can't
answer all of them. No.
And then people get upset because, you didn't answer my email. It's like, I'm only, like, there's only 2 of us or 3 people. Like,
you're like, that was not an email. That was an essay.
Yeah.
You told me your whole life story.
So, yeah, it's tough, man. It's like, unless you got a team of people that are experts, like a lot of the work, like, you know this, you're doing it yourself. You got to learn. You got to be a jack of all trades. You're doing accounting. You're doing customer service. You're doing product design, system development. Oh, man.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hard going into business. People don't get that. People are like, hey, where's my board? I ordered it 2 weeks ago. Like, what's up with that, you know? They just don't get it. So you had a forum at one point, right? Do you still have that, or is that off?
Yeah, it's that I rebranded it just recently. So this is my shirt here. ESB, Electric Skateboard Builder. So if you don't know about electric skateboards and you want to learn, just type Electric Skateboard Builder Forum, and there's a whole forum. It looks like it's got this logo, so you'll recognize it. That's what my YouTube channel is now, Electric Skateboard Builder. So I rebranded all of the sort of the DIY and the information sources under Electric Skateboard Builder. So it ties it all together. But yeah, it's one of the biggest forums for electric skateboard builders.
And so it's the same one that was from when the day. So that means you can see like see posts from way back in the day when the whole thing started. Oh, okay, all right. So it's the original.
Since 2014.
Okay.
Back.
Wow. Yeah. So that's a very valuable resource.
15 maybe. Yeah. But yeah, it's got huge amounts of information on it.
Yeah. I might have been to your forum and not know that I was there because the other day I was looking for how to do the nunchuck instead of the whatever the other, right? The different type of controlling
Yeah.
your thing.
Yeah. The
And
Nano and the Nunchuck. Yeah.
yeah, and there's different protocols, right? It's like the ones that are for the servos are called
PPM.
PPM, and
Yeah.
then if you just want
UR.
like a throttle, is I think is UR, right? Like if you just want to use like a
For
throttle,
scooter,
like a scooter.
I think, yeah, it depends on the throttle, but it's normally ADC.
Oh, I think that's what it was. Yeah, yeah. And
Something
so
like
I
that,
didn't
yeah.
know where to plug the cables, and I was like, how do you do it? So then I just, Googled it, and yeah, I think I went to some forum, and then you can start reading the posts. It was probably your forum, because you're
Yeah,
probably
it
one
is.
of the...
Like if you go onto Google and just search like electric skateboard DIY or how to attach an electric skateboard motor, like it comes up. Or the forum, it ranks organically for like all of that stuff. So if you need help, go there. I'm always hanging around on there. I help people, like all the noobs that get on there and don't know what they're doing. I help them out for free. Like often it's the same question over and over again. So you just have to show them where to look. Like check this article out that we wrote, but it's packed full of information. It's free. So yeah, it's definitely the place to go.
All right. So that's what you're going to do. Now you're going to concentrate in developing the newer, cheaper version of that and selling that, making it available to people. It's compatible with old Enertion boards, right? With
Correct.
the software and the hardware.
Yeah.
And for new builds also.
New builds. We've got a few other brands of electric skateboard companies who are using this in their own production line because it's just so easy to set up. So we've got a few new companies coming on board, which I can't quite announce yet, but that's exciting news for the future as well. So we're just going to be able to focus on that instead of having all this stuff to do and running around and people all over the world and factories. Like it's so much simpler now. We can put all of our resources into just being the world leader in this technology. And I think we've got a little bit of work to do because obviously, I'm starting from scratch essentially in some ways, but we're already making really good progress and it's exciting.
Well, that's cool, man. I wish you all the success. Yeah, how'd you had to do it again? Would you maybe not try to do the whole thing, like a whole skateboard, and maybe like go like just one part at a time? Looking back,
a few people have asked me this question: what would you do any different? And I've had some time to think about it, and there's a few things that like jump out at me, and it's like, yeah, that was stupid. But overall, I think I'm an impatient guy. Like I had a vision, and I wanted to make it happen, and maybe there's a little bit of naivety there, and I didn't know what I didn't know. But if I had to go back to 2014 and run it all again, I probably would have done everything the same. Like the same goals would have been there, but I would have approached things with a slightly different mentality. I may not have taken so much risk, which the funny thing about when you start saying that is risk equals reward. So sometimes if you don't take those risks, you might not have achieved the results. So you could have ended up down a different path. So
yeah,
I don't think I would have changed too much. I really think all the things I did were done for really good reasons. Making a hub motor electric skateboard, someone had to do it, so I did it. Making a dual drive, dual channel motor controller like this, no one else did it, so we created that. Creating a forum where people can come and share information. Like all of the things that we did under my former company are good things. We created great products. We had 15,000 customers. Like we did a lot of good things, but in the end, a few companies much bigger than us, much more capitally prepared than us, like Boosted and Inboard with you know, there was $100 million worth of investment down the drain just in those two companies. I just think the market is really tough, and I didn't anticipate how hard it would be. But everything else we did, I think we did all right. I'm not an engineer. I'm just some dude in my garage, and I had no investment, and we did pretty well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you did it for a few years, and you created a lot of product. You created I mean, people love them. I remember you guys used to, your customers used to always want to put your board up against anything, right? Like, oh, you got to boost it. Come on, let's drag race. I saw a couple of videos, people going up and down the streets in San Francisco, right? And then you would always see there's a huge communities of these guys that would do ride alongs, or the guys with your inertion boards always used to like be hauling ass at the front of the pack kind of thing. So
in San Fran, there's a big group rides in San Fran all the time. So yeah, man, it's like
I missed that. I almost went to one in New York. You know, there's a huge group in New York.
Yes.
Of riders, and I was like, I'll fly down there just so I can ride with you guys because I want to see what this is like. You know what I mean? Like, but I missed it. You know, and then this year happened, and it just goes to hell, right?
It'll come back, man. It'll come back. Like, everyone that is into electric skateboards, everyone's super passionate. Sometimes it comes across in a bad way, but everyone's passionate. Everyone loves it. And, if everyone just loves more and hates less, and we all work together and keep trying to make it better, it's going to get better. So
it's going to get better. Well,
yeah.
That's a good place to end it right there with something positive.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think
good to have a chat.
Yeah, man. I hope all the success to you and with your ventures. I think you have a good product. I think you have, I think you have good things coming in your future. So I'm here to help in any way I can. We're still kind of cross paths. I like this technology. I like, electricity and batteries and stuff. And if I can help you in any way, we're here, to collaborate and stuff. All right?
Awesome, bro. Yeah. We're not going anywhere. I've got new ideas, and I'm the same old guy that I used to be, just a slightly different flavor. And yeah, I'm excited.
More wise now, with more wisdom.
More wise.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so now, what's your website so that people can go and visit and buy that?
Yeah, so if you want to buy this, massivestater.com. And we're also going to be doing a promo on the forum, the Electric Skateboard Builders Forum. Every month, I'm going to be giving one of these away just for free to anyone who's on that forum, just to help promote people to make better electric skateboards. I'm going to be on the forums trying to teach people how to make them and giving these away as prizes just for people that are hanging out there and having fun. So check out the forums, check out the website if you want to buy one of these, and otherwise you might win one.
All right, sounds good. So if you're interested in building an electric skateboard, now you know where to go. Go check out Jason's stuff. All right, Jason, thank you for spending time with me and telling me your story. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you in the next one.
See you, mate. Bye.
All right.